Hey, what is going on, everybody? It is Blue, and we've gotten around to making a 10.0.5 guide for Pharaoh Druid. I hope you guys enjoy it. Hopefully, we can learn something. I know I'm always going into it and learning something, and then like 2 weeks down the road, you may find me on stream. You're like, Blue, you're not really doing the rotation correctly, and it's like, ah, yeah, you're right, I'm not. But hopefully, that's not you, and that you can, you know, perform the best that you can be on Feral Druid. As always, you guys, all of this information, I'll go ahead and leave links below. I've been doing basically just Google spreadsheets to this information. So if you find it, helpful to listen through it, but then to be like, well, I want to, instead of watching the video again, I want to refresh. I just want to look. That is totally fine, and we're going to go ahead and do it that way. Um, but Feral Druid has been really well. In 10.0.5, it has done well. I think that we're shifting from a meta of very bleed reliant to more bite focused. And I think that's going to scare a lot of people away. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We're not getting back to the Shadowlands Feral Druid where bite damage is just extremely excessive. And then it basically everything else you do, it just feels like it doesn't matter. That's not exactly how we are right now. It is going shifting to a more bite focused play style. That is going to shift our talents. It's going to shift our stats. It's going to shift our rotation. But our bleeds are still relevant, and that is how Feral should play. Bite is our strongest finishing move. It should feel very good and impactful to press. Did it really feel good and impactful to press last season? Yeah, it did. It needed to be there. It was fun having bleeds, but that is very much not going to be the play style in 10.0.5, and it is fine. I think Feral Druid in general is excelling. I think it is performing extremely well in dungeons. We have this niche thing that Feral fills as far as being probably one. It depends on pack size, but one of the best damaging specs in the game for funnel. And it does that by spreading its bleeds and by Apex procs giving you a ton of bite damage that you can funnel into one single target. In Raid, we don't see that as something that's really super important. Um, but in Mythic Plus, it is. We see this in Algathar Academy with the tree boss, and we see this with the first boss in Ruby Life Pools when the Whelpling comes and you still have to damage the boss to get the shield down. So Feral Druid is performing really well. I love to see that it's kind of filling this niche scenario that it has, and it's being a part of that it probably never was before. So it's really exciting. I'm excited to play Feral Druid. Let's go ahead and get into the specifics of it with talents. Okay, we are going to be talking about 3 different talent builds. We're going to be talking, and basically they're all great builds to be running that I think you should be copy and pasting, putting on here. Basically, the builds are there's a Mythic Plus build for ads. This is going to be completely different from the Mythic Plus build for the bosses, Tyrannical Weeks, right? And then that is going to be even different from the single raid boss fights. So we're going to go over them. What's very interesting this patch is the different ad weeks or the different weeks of Mythic Plus. You are going to be playing very much a different play style. And some people might have an issue with that because you might really fall in love with one play style, and then when the week changes, you'll be like, oh man, I don't really want to go back to playing this different build. So that's something that never really existed before. That does now. Um, so it will be interesting. I think people will, after a couple weeks of just balancing back and forth, people will start favoring one over the other. So that'll be very interesting. I don't want to talk too much about this general tree. Um, this is not the tree that most Feral Druids play. I will say that. Most Feral Druids are going to opt into grabbing Innervate and grabbing Nature's Vigil. I think Nature's Vigil has become even more powerful in 10.0.5 because Bite is stronger. And Bite is going to be a huge source of Nature's Vigil's healing, especially the Bite build, especially the Tyrannical Mythic Plus build and the Raid build. It's going to become even stronger. I play Feral Druid is a very selfish character when I play. And basically, my idea is, hey, I'm a feral druid. I have a B res. It's important for me to live out situations, and I do that by picking up defensive talents. Okay. Now, it can be very good to help your group and possibly help the success of your group with Innervate, with Nature's Vigil. I understand that. But to me, also, Feral Druid is getting to a point for me where it's getting a lot of, and not a lot. I also play Brewmaster Monk, so it's kind of weird saying this, but it's getting a little bit of button bloat. I find myself having a lot of shift macros, having a lot of control macros, and it's just to the point where I don't really want extra buttons. I think I have my, yeah, I even have healing meters up, which is kind of, lazy of me to say this, so I can easily just, add the innervate to the healing meters, but just that extra button for Nature's Vigil, that's something else. So you guys, if you want to find information of people's builds, by the way, Warcraft logs, Raider IO, you can look up top Raider IO's builds, and you can kind of compare those. I think that's a really good thing to do to even suggest before I'm talking about talents. All right, so let's go into this in Mythic Plus week, and this is like an ad week. For ad week, it's very much a bleed heavy play style. We're going to grab Tiger's Fury. We're going to grab Primal Wrath. We're going to grab Tear Up and Wounds. There's going to be comments on this, and this is fine. There's comments every single time. Primal Wrath is AoE rips. It's just like rip, okay? The difference between Primal Wrath and rip is the elongation, the length of time that the rips are staying on the target. This is spreading out those rips and making them very small rips, which makes it so that there isn't really a lot of time to do anything in between those rips, right? And that's why we go into Tear Up and Wounds, which basically is saying, hey, there's not a lot of time in between rips, but this, because you go into Tear Up and Wounds, you can go Primal Wrath to Primal Wrath. That is an actual rotation. We're aware of this now. In single target, you want to apply your rip, and then you want to bite. You want to bite in between as much as possible. That's your big source of damage. So that's why we always rip over Primal Wrath in single target. If there's any more targets than one, you can do Primal Wrath. Okay, where there's that comment's always there. Double Clawed Rake, good damage. Rake is really good, and basically we're picking up the rest. And the choice is basically, here's the choice. It's AoE right here, and then I need to progress down my tree, and then from here it's Omen of Clarity of Tireless Energy. Omen of Clarity always wins out energy-wise and damage-wise, okay? We're going to continue down our tree. We want to buff Rake, especially with Double Clawed. We want to buff Rip because it's good. We're going to go ahead and grab Brutal Slashes. We're going to grab both of our Berserks. Berserk extra damage, Berserk cooldown. Very, very good. We're going to have our Bite Cleave. Very interesting how this works, by the way. And then we're going to actually opt into, these are Tiger's Fury buffs. One's going to elongate the time. We're actually going to go with helping us get through the cooldown faster. The white one is kind of more AoE. Red one is more single target focus. And then we're going to go ahead and grab Moment of Clarity. Now, this is the exact same build you're probably running. This is the old build. Changing it to 10.0.5, we have one extra talent, and we dump that into Bite. Okay, this is going to help. This is going to help, and then it's going to cleave. Very, very good. From here, we're building the same build. We're going to go Blood Talons. Blood Talons is best on ad week. It's the best we can be. It's the best damage. There's no dispute about that. I know people are kind of like, oh, well, is Blood Talons good? Or is Lion's Strength good? We will go over the builds. Blood Talons is good in ad week, okay? And then here we are for this build. Now, I do want to say, I'm going to mention this a little bit later. Basically, in this build, later I'm going to be talking about basically a Primal Wrath combo, which to me means you're Primal Wrathing back to back, versus how that relates to a Bite combo. This is kind of the big thing people want answered, and we'll answer this later. But basically, how do those relate in damage? You know, when should I bite in my rotation? We will discuss that because it is very important. Now, a real nitpicky thing for a developer, if they're ever watching this, or so they can know, the optimization with Primal Wrath, if these are big mobs, a lot of packs, Primal Wrath always wins out over Bite. Okay, Primal Wrath is very good. All the things that go into Primal Wrath and Primal Wrath combo is better than biting. Okay, but with that said, to optimize that, Primal Wrath lasts 10 seconds. If you refresh it, during its pandemic window, it's going to be like 12 point something seconds. We'll say 12 seconds. Okay, 4 seconds of that is taken away by tear open wounds. 3 seconds is taken away by properly refreshing at its pandemic window. So basically, the optimal time to Primal Wrath is you have once you Primal Wrath, you have 5 seconds to Primal Wrath again, right? That's the optimal time frame. It's 5 point something seconds. So 5 seconds, and that's to maximize your damage, which gives you about 2.5 bleed ticks in between those. But what's interesting is, as far as if a developer's watching this, Rip and Tear, how Rip and Tear functions, as you can see, is it applies a bleed to the target for 6.4 seconds. So I think this is an error. I think that 6.4 seconds needs to be condensed into 5 seconds to work with how basically Primal Wrath works. Primal Wrath and Tear Open Wounds and refreshing them at the optimal time, how that works. Unfortunately, Tear Open Wounds, this 6.4 seconds gets lost. 1.5 of its seconds, almost 1.5 seconds, maybe a little bit less if it gets lost. So that's something to talk about. I think that's an issue that needs to be resolved later on, which will help our AoE a bit more. Right now, Rip and Tear is a very minor damage increase for where it is on this talent screen, and I think part of it is just optimizing its time frame with the actual optimization, just the way Feral Druid needs to be working correctly. Anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at M+ on Tyrannical. What do those builds look like? Going to be significantly different. We do need to worry more about now on bite damage. Bite damage is more key, and this is perfect to talk about this when we kind of talk about Primal Wrath bleed damage versus bite damage. How do those scale? Well, the Primal Wrath bleed damage scales higher, faster, the more mobs that are introduced. But lower count, bite wins overall. Okay? So when we start talking about boss damage, we kind of want to focus a little bit more on bites, and especially say, even if it's ad week and I'm in a Court of Stars where the mobs that you're pulling are significantly less, even though it's not Tyrannical week, you may even want to go to this because bite is stronger, lower mob count. Okay, so that's why we're going to be putting more emphasis here on bite. We still are grabbing all of our AoE because hey, it's still a Mythic Plus environment, right? So basically, this is going to look the same. We're going Raging Fury here because we are emphasizing more on elongating those Tiger's Fury. And what we're doing is we're switching Moment of Clarity out for Relentless Predator. We want to bite more often, faster through our rotation. And that's kind of the key is speed here. And to get this speed working, we're actually grabbing Lion's Strength. Okay, and I know that sounds really strange, but when you think about bite, Relentless Predator, Lion's Strength, combined with Incarnation, I just think of speed, I think of cruising through my rotation so fast, and basically the combo is shred, bite, shred, bite, shred, bite. And that's kind of what you want to pull off, and it is amazing damage. And the reason we go Lion's Strength is we don't really have any time in between those shred, bites, shred, bites, shred, bites to constantly refresh our bleeds. Yeah, if they're about to fall off, I want to refresh my bleeds. I want to refresh my rake, my thrash, sure, because those also enhance my bite damage. But I don't really want to do that every other rotation, right? Blood Talons, you need every other rotation to be refreshed. That's not optimal on this case. You just want to go bite, shred, or shred, bite, whatever. So you can see here, we still have bleeds, we still have Primal Wrath, we still have Tear Open Wounds. We still have Circle of Life, so our bleeds are still doing really well. We still have that portion of ad damage that we need, but we're focusing a lot here on bites. So when we get to that single target situation, we're still going to really excel. Or if it's a Court of Stars, hey, although I still have these bleed options ticking and there, I can focus a little bit more on bites. Hopefully that makes sense. We will go over rotation later. I don't want this to be too long. All right, let's go ahead and look at single target raid build. You're going to see here I changed up a little things on my general talent tree, and that's just because I don't think I need Typhoon when I'm raiding. Maybe I do. There's probably situations I do, and I probably need it. But I just kind of went like this. There's really no need to go to do this. All I'm getting extra is improved bark skin. You know, I don't even think in raid that I go bear and heal myself, because it's kind of like, oh, if I die in raid, it's somebody else's fault, right? Unless I die to a mechanic, right? Anyways. All right, we're talking about bite builds. We're talking about bites, right? Bites are very strong single target. How can we optimize that? Well, single target's very easy. We only have these options of single target. We don't need any AoE options. This is really wonderful because it frees up 2 talent points to put in Tyros Energy, which are really important for biting. Biting, even though we're going into Relentless Predator, it's an expensive spell. It's costly. And this is going to really help the value of just elongating that consistent bite damage. Really wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and grab just everything we see here. Going down here, we're going to continue Lion Strength. We talked about kind of that bite damage and why you want to go Lion Strength. We are still going to get some damage here from our bleeds. Okay, we still have bleeds rolling. We still got our Rake. We got our Thrash. Those are helping me with my bite damage. We're even grabbing Feral Frenzy. This is more of a button off cooldown. This is going to help also with a little bit of bite damage. Kind of help when you're ready to just pop off, and it gives you that bleed for an extra seconds to get maybe a couple bites in within that time frame. Get you an extra 5%. Yeah, an extra 5% with that. But basically with this build, it's just shred, bite, shred, bite, shred, bite. Pressing abilities off cooldown. Feral Frenzy, Adaptive Swarm. Refreshing bleeds when you need to. Go back to shred, bite, shred, bite, shred, bite. Right? That is basically the build, and that's why we're also not grabbing Brutal Slash. The focus is just shred, bite for basically the whole time frame of Incarnation. So for that whole time frame of Incarnation, you're not even using Brutal Slash, right? There's just better options to put in the talent tree when there's just a large portion of the fight you're not going to use. You know, it's great when you need Brutal Slash to kind of proc those Blood Talons and such, that extra spell. But it's not going to be used at all here. They're just better options we can put in our talent tree. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at stats. All right, we're going to take a look at stats here, and we're going to switch back to the game to kind of talk about a very important point. But the stat priority is changing in 10.0.5 from what it was when it was bleed heavy, and now it's a lot more damage focused on bites, which we've been talking about this whole time. Now, Mastery and Crit is going to interchange depending on the content that you're doing. For instance, in Raid, Crit is going to be a lot more, a lot more important as far, more than Mastery, and this is probably even true for our Tyrannical build. Now, the reason that is, in single target, I feel like it's a no-brainer that Crit is extremely important. Basically, you want to cruise through rotation as fast as possible as far as shred, bite, shred, bite, shred, bite. Now, you can do that on for Infinity, as long as you're in your Incarnation window if you have enough Crit. Now, what's the value of Crit that you're looking for to do that? Well, it's 50% Crit. We got another egg. Thanks, buddy. Go give that to Mommy. You want 50% Crit. Now, the reason why is Shred during your Berserk or your Incarn windows has double Crit. So 50% Crit turns into 100% Crit, and now you always go through rotation just with one Shred. We don't need exactly, if you're looking for the exact numbers, we don't need exactly 100. We need 90 because our 4-set gives us 10% Crit, right? So 90 divided by 2, so instead of 50%, you're looking to optimize around 45%. Whether that's obtainable or not for raid, single target, that is kind of the one to look for, 45% Crit. So you can just, during those windows, you just go ham and just go back and forth, shred, bite, shred, bite, shred, bite. Oh, I need to refresh my bleeds. That rotation got sucked, but then shred, bite, you know what I'm saying? Now, as far as the Mythic Plus builds, you'd be like, well, it's kind of a no-brainer that bleeds are very important, and you know, you're going to get a lot more from your bleed damage from mastery than you are crit. But there is an interaction that's very interesting as far as taste for blood and rampant ferocity. Basically, how does bite work and how does the spread of bite work? And usually you would think, okay, well, rampant ferocity is going to take my damage of bite, and it's going to say 35% of that damage is now cleaving all my adds, right? And you're like, okay, cool. In that idea of cleaving all the adds, you kind of think just like all your other spells as far as, you know, primal wraths and everything like that. You're just cleaving everything. Every single one of those abilities has a chance to crit, right? And we even have this graph here. So it's like even if you don't have a lot of crit value, since that's spreading, one of them's going to crit, maybe a couple of them are going to crit. That's not exactly how rampant ferocity works. It's super simplified, and all it says is, hey, you bit. Your bite was 100k. Okay, 35k is now spread to all the mobs, 5 targets, and then everybody else is less than that. And that's exactly how it works. There is 0 crit involved at all, except your initial bite. And it's like, oh man, now a lot more pressure is on that initial bite to really crit, so that the cleave can happen and be a greater, stronger cleave, right? So that's unfortunate that it works like that. I'm not sure if it's intended to work like that or if these can actually crit themselves. They do not. They just take 35% and spread it without crits. So that actually puts more focus on crit for this tyrannical build. Crit may be a little bit more important because this is kind of the bite build, whatnot. It is still Primal Wrath build, and we will go into, again, kind of Primal Wrath takes over AoE situations, even with this build. But this is kind of a more on-boss build. And then, you know, if you are, you know, attacking adds, and it's a smaller amount of adds, where you're going to be biting more often than Primal Wrathing, then yeah, crit is. But I would say, in general, the rule of thumb here, it's pretty easy. If you are a Raider, crit is going to be higher than mastery. If you're a Mythic Pluser, and you're going to be, especially a Mythic Pluser that's going to be switching from 1 week to the next week to a bleed week to a bite week, mastery is going to be a little bit stronger than critical strike. And then let's talk about versatility would probably be next. And then haste is actually now going to be the last one. The thing about haste, and it is good. What haste can do, so let's say 0 to 5% here, is it's going to make those primal rips tick one time more during your ticks, and that's really good for getting your apex to procs. But you're going to look at from 5% to 20%, that is a lot of haste. This is going to require a lot of haste. If you could have gotten that 20%, you're getting a ton of bites and you're getting a lot of damage. But to get to that, it's very difficult. And what's really cool is this patch to get to 5%. There's haste in our tier set, and a lot of people are running the Court of Stars ring. You don't need any more haste. So that's why this is actually at the bottom, because it says, hey, basically to get value from this haste, you got to go from 5 to 20, and it's unreasonable, right? So you're going to get enough haste already, so don't worry about it. It's basically at the bottom. And then versatility would be the stat that you would get if you can't get crit, mastery, then you can go get versatility. I'm leaving this up here so you guys can go ahead and see this. There's some other things in here, how crit and mob density work, haste and energy regen, and kind of how that works. Hey, you guys, I was checking out Bloodmount really quickly to look at trinkets and see what they said. Bloodmount, just a heads up, the beginning of the expansion, it was all over the place. Now, I would imagine as the expansion continues to get more and more accurate. Now, they are running the build, and here's the I guess the build that you would run if you're running Nature's Vigil, by the way. But they are running the build that we suggested here, so single target, and we're looking at stats here, and it looks like they are still prioritizing more mastery than they are crit. So that might be really important to you, and that may actually be the way to go, because as I suggested, hey, I think crit would be more important as far as raid. Obviously, there is importance within getting through your rotation really, really quickly. So you guys can take it what you want. But what I really want to check out here is trinkets. So obviously single target, there are some really good raid trinkets. What I want to talk about here is I think Puzzle Box. It's been really slept on. I think a lot of Puzzle Box is really good. I think it's difficult to use because you're just like, oh, I got to cast it and I got to get out of stealth and whatnot. But it's really good. You just kind of force yourself to use it. Gift of Radiance also really good. Now, what I would say is Hunger of the Pack. I would say this is also probably pretty good. I would put these ones also up there a little bit. I would value this a lot higher than it is. I think it's really good. It's a really good stat. It's basically just like Gift of the Radiance. Gives you a little bit more damage as far as like an on-use effect, but just a really good stat trinket. And then Windscar Whetstone. Um, I think it's really good as far as AoE is concerned. But I just feel bad because it's like, man, I'm getting this mastery, but I really would like, I really value the agility plus extra stats more than I do the whetstone, even though it comes with this huge damage effect. So those are kind of my feelings on this. I think Algathar, Puzzle Box on top. Obviously, these grief totems and stuff, these are in niche situations, for whatever weeks you want to run it, or if you're doing a boss or whatnot. So yeah, those raid trinkets are kind of up there. But as far as on the list, I think Puzzle Box, and then if I could have it, I'd have Puzzle Box with maybe either Grift of the Radiance or Hunger of the Pack, and then probably right under that would be Windstar Whetstone. But that's it as far as trinkets. All right, I've been delaying this. I'm going to try to get through this really quickly. It is a lot of to talk about, but we need to understand Primal Combo with Talented Circle of Life. I spoke about this basically of when optimally to Primal Wrath to Primal Wrath. You have 5 seconds in between. Bad design, rip and tear. We already spoke about this, luckily. Kind of put some rough numbers together so you are aware, so we can kind of get a graph and look at the difference between Primal Combo and Bite Combo. Now, these are super, super rough numbers. Please understand, this is a bite combo without any rips ticking. This is just what does bite damage do by itself? What is the combo of just biting back to back? What does the combo of Primal Wrath do back to back? But still, we can see this scaling effect of Primal Wrath, not so great in single target, obviously. And then it's going to be scaling. So it looks like 3 targets. These are about the same. And then it's going to scale. Now, this is just a really rough graph again, but we can get the idea. It says, hey, bite combo is very good. It is very efficient when there's 3 targets or less. So what does that mean? That means if you're in Algathar Academy and you are on the tree boss, I guess the tree boss is a bad example because that's funnel damage and that's actually important. Let's say we're on the ads of right before Algathar Academy, and you pop your Incarn, and you're just like, oh yeah, I pop my Incarn, I'm going to just do some crazy bites. And I know this is going to sound weird, but everybody has done it. Everybody feels like it. They pop their Incarn, and they're just like, okay, I don't even care about Primal Wrath anymore. I'm just going to go spam bite. Boom, 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 boom. And you're just like, yeah, I'm doing so much damage. And then you look at the damage meter, and you're like, oh, I'm not really doing that much damage. The funny thing is that is not the case, obviously. Spamming those bites are not as efficient as it would be to do your Primal Wraths, but with the optimal time frame with the 5 seconds in between, right? So that is there, and if anybody can confirm they have done that, or whenever they press their Incarn, that's what they like to do is bite spam, and they're wondering why their damage isn't going up. It feels like it should, but that there is some very good strength with getting those Primal Wraths with optimal time frames in between. And basically the reason why is you have a few rip ticks in between, but you have your Primal AoE, which is uncapped. You have your rip and your tear, which is uncapped, but the damage is terrible, probably because it's, the time frame needs to be cut sooner. So these 2 are uncapped, and then we have tear open wounds. This is capped at 5 targets, just like Rampant Ferocity is capped at 5 targets. But basically, this is the only thing spreading. Whereas Primal Wrath, you have this spreading to everything, this spreading to everything, and then this also spreading. So, just keep that in mind with these. So the results, basically we talked about that. But can we still sneak in bites during our berserk? And the answer is yes. Now you need to do it very well with basically you need to be using your energy efficiently and be like, well, do I have enough energy to do this? And this is going to be me kind of telling you, yes, it is possible. Yes, practice this. You have 5 seconds. I mean, you can get through 5 seconds of shred biting and then do a rotation and get your primal wrath up again, and it will be pretty efficient, right? But can you do that every single time? Can you do primal bite, primal bite, primal bite for infinity until your incarn falls off? No, probably not. You won't have the energy for that. I doubt you'll have the energy for that on an AOE situation. So yes, try it, figure it out. Now, a lot of these things that I'm going through as far as my area rotation is considering you're running blood talents, and I realized that and I'm like, oh crap, this isn't that great. So let's go ahead and take a look at the blood talents rotation with blood talents. I added this. This is going to be the bleed focus rotation again, where we have blood talents and we have to proc blood talents. Now, if this is a huge pack, again, we are going to be focusing on primal wrathing back to back. You want to also look at this graph. You want to also buff the primal wrath with blood talons, and then the bite you can kind of care less if it gets procced with the blood talons or not, if you're trying to squeeze in a bite in between your rotations. If not, just rely on your primal wraths back to back and then rely on your apex procs. And then with that, you want to obviously just proc blood talons every single rotation, anticipating a bite proc, and then you get that bite and buffed with the blood talons, and you got the primal wrath buffed with the blood talons, and then you go again, you start over, right? I think everybody is a little bit familiar with that, and they totally understand that. So I think the proper rotation is Rake Thrash, Brutal, to Primal Wrath, and then you tab target and you do it again. Optimally the play is to fill in Shred over Thrash, right? But with that said, is if you are considering, hey, I want to squeeze in some actually forced bites during my incarnation, it's probably best to just Rake Thrash Brutal Slash, tab Rake Thrash Brutal Slash, and then keep that those shreds for when you are actually forcing those quick bites. Now, the reason why is it may not mess up your blood talons rotation as much, because those shreds are going to act eventually as part of your blood talons, and you're going to get goofed up with your blood talons, things like that, if that makes sense. But what I would do is I would just forcefully make sure your blood talons procs always happen when you're getting ready to primal, because again, that is the big pieces of our damage. Now, as far as when we're not running blood talons, the priorities here are obviously we want to get rakes on everything we can, because that is just an extremely amount of damage. We do want to maintain thrash, and the reason why is because that's increasing our bite damage. And then it's brutal slash over shred, or shred over brutal slash during incarnation, during berserk, right? So basically very easy there. I think that's it, you guys. There are more to it. I will leave this information up here. Just understand some of these rotations is with blood talons, right? That never used to be a thing where I used to consider not ever playing blood talons. I don't think I talked about this, but single raid target rotation. First of all, go on Warcraft logs, find somebody, because the most important things about raid is usually the openers. So even if I give you a rotation or not, it doesn't matter. I would look at somebody and see how they do their opener. So figure out how to do that. That's important. But raid, it's very easy. Again, it's just pressing buttons off cooldown, your adaptive swarm, your feral frenzy, during keeping your bleeds up, during your incarnation. Am I saying this right? Incarnation, is that what this talent is? During your berserk. It's just shred bite, shred bite, shred bite. Maintain bleeds, press abilities off cooldown, shred bite, shred bite, shred bite. I imagine that's what it is. But again, usually the most important things on boss fights are how are they setting up the opener? How are they setting it up with your trinkets of your puzzle box? They're probably doing it before pull and whatnot. But that stuff's really really important as far as raid, and probably more important for you to be following kind of somebody's guidelines than kind of just saying like, oh, blue says do this, do that, and it's like, yeah, you're going to see they are doing that, but you want to see what's really important. But that's it, you guys. Hopefully, this guide video was entertaining. I don't know, was helpful. But that's it for me. Enjoy. Good luck, you guys. Oh, by the way, this is a dungeon. Oh wait, no, this was a pretty failed dungeon. But you can see kind of this is me running the bite build, and you can see, hey, the bleeds are still relevant, you guys, but bites are doing really good. This was also a lot of failed attempts on the very last boss. So there's that. But it was really successful. I had a lot of fun doing it. Still pumping really good, and it's a very much laid back style where you don't have to worry about blood talents, especially in boss weeks. It's great. You could just focus on, hey, the boss and the mechanics. But that's it. You guys take it easy. Good luck with ferals. Good luck getting into keys. I find that the most frustrating thing, and is actually why I am playing my Brewmaster more than I'm playing my Feral Druid now. I just don't have a team to be playing M pluses with, and I do not get invited. I think somewhere along the lines, I'm 2,600 IO. Somewhere along the lines, I didn't push my IO as high, and now I feel like I'm behind the bar, and I just don't get invited to groups, and I'm still struggling to try to get into those 20s, even though I feel like I could. But that's it. That's another story. Take it easy, everybody. Peace out.